The convoy of 3 military vehicles rolled to a stop 2 miles outside Ashford, Colorado, their engines cutting through the unnatural silence that blanketed the mountain valley. Lieutenant Rebecca Hay stepped out of the lead Humvee, her boots crunching against gravel as she surveyed the abandoned town through her binoculars. Nothing moved. No bird sang. No wind rustled through the pines. The small mining town that had gone dark 72 hours ago looked like a photograph, frozen and lifeless under the late afternoon sun. Rebecca lowered her binoculars, her jaw tight as she turned to face her team. Sergeant Maria Rodriguez emerged from the second vehicle, checking her rifle with practiced efficiency, while Corporal Amy Patterson and Private Jessica Morgan climbed out from the third. 4 women, all experienced soldiers from Fort Carson's Special Operations Unit, sent to investigate what the brass initially dismissed as a simple communications failure. But Rebecca knew better. She had seen the last garbled transmission from Ashford's Sheriff Department, had heard the screaming in the background before the feed went dead. This was no technical malfunction. "Listen up," Rebecca addressed her team, her voice low but commanding. "We go in quiet. 2x2 formation. Rodriguez, you're with me. Patterson, keep Morgan close. We're doing a standard reconnaissance sweep through Main Street, then checking the sheriff's station. Command wants eyes on the situation before they send in a full unit." Maria nodded, her dark eyes scanning the tree line that surrounded them. "What exactly are we looking for, Lieutenant?" The briefing was thin on details. Rebecca hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Potential biological hazard. The CDC detected some anomalous readings from the water treatment facility before communication ceased. Could be a contamination event." It was a sanitized version of the truth, but the full story remained classified even from her team. What she did not tell them was that 3 other towns across Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana had gone silent in the past 2 weeks, all following the same pattern: strange reports, panicked calls, then nothing. Ashford was the 4th, and the first one. Command had authorized boots on the ground to investigate. The 4 women moved forward in tactical formation, their weapons ready but not raised, professional wariness evident in every calculated step. The road into Ashford wound through dense forest, and Rebecca's instincts screamed warnings with each passing moment. The silence was wrong, fundamentally wrong in a way that made her skin crawl. No insects, no animals, nothing but the sound of their own breathing and footsteps. As they rounded the final bend, the town came into full view, and what Rebecca saw made her raise her fist, signaling an immediate halt. Cars sat abandoned in the middle of the street, doors hanging open as if their occupants had fled in panic. Storefronts gaped like empty eye sockets, windows shattered, merchandise scattered across sidewalks. Dark stains marked the pavement, leading in trails toward buildings and alleyways. Amy's voice came through the radio, barely a whisper. "Lieutenant, is that blood?" Rebecca did not answer immediately, studying the scene before them. The stains were too widespread, too numerous. Whatever had happened here had been sudden and violent. "Stay alert. Patterson, Morgan, check that pharmacy on the right. Rodriguez, with me to the sheriff's station. Keep your radios hot and report anything unusual. Anything at all." The team split up, moving with tactical precision through the ghost town. Rebecca and Maria advanced toward the small brick building that housed Ashford's law enforcement, their rifles now raised and ready. The front door stood ajar, and through the gap, Rebecca could see overturned furniture and scattered papers. She pressed her back against the wall beside the entrance, nodding to Maria, who took position on the opposite side. On her count, they moved in fast and fluid, sweeping the reception area. Empty. The holding cells in the back stood open, their locks still engaged but the bars bent outward as if something impossibly strong had forced them apart from the inside. Maria's breathing quickened. "Lieutenant, these bars are 2-inch steel. What could possibly—" A crash from upstairs cut her off, followed by a dragging sound, slow and deliberate. Rebecca's finger moved to her trigger as she gestured toward the stairwell. The sound came again, louder now, accompanied by something else, a wet, rasping breath that definitely did not sound human. The two women began their ascent, each step taking them deeper into the darkness above, neither one aware that in the pharmacy across the street, Amy Patterson was about to make a discovery that would change everything they thought they knew about their mission. The stairwell of the sheriff's station reeked of copper and decay, a smell that Rebecca recognized immediately from her tours overseas. Death had visited this place, and recently. She and Maria moved upward with excruciating slowness, their weapon lights cutting through the gloom as the dragging sound above them continued its methodical rhythm. Back and forth. Back and forth. Like something pacing, or searching. Rebecca's radio crackled softly, and Amy's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Lieutenant, we've got a situation at the pharmacy. You need to see this." Rebecca pressed her transmit button once for acknowledgement but did not speak, her eyes fixed on the landing above. Whatever was up there had stopped moving, and somehow that was worse than the sound. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats, 4, 5. Then came a new noise that made her blood run cold, a low, guttural moan that resonated with such wrongness that every instinct screamed at her to run. Maria's hands tightened on her rifle, her whisper barely audible. "That's not possible. That sounded like—" She did not finish the sentence because at that moment, a figure lurched into view at the top of the stairs. In the beam of Rebecca's weapon light, she saw what had once been a man, still wearing the torn remnants of a sheriff's deputy uniform. His skin had taken on a grayish pallor, mottled with dark veins that spiderwebbed across exposed flesh. But it was the eyes that struck her most, milky white and utterly devoid of recognition or humanity. The thing that had been a deputy tilted its head at an unnatural angle, fixing its dead gaze upon them, and then it moved. Not with the shambling gait of Hollywood fiction, but with frightening, predatory speed. Rebecca fired on instinct, 3 controlled bursts center mass, the reports deafening in the enclosed stairwell. The bullet struck true, punching through the deputy's chest, but he barely slowed. Maria added her own fire, and finally, a headshot dropped the creature, sending it tumbling down the stairs to land in a twisted heap at their feet. For a moment, neither woman moved, their weapons still trained on the body, waiting for any sign of movement. Rebecca's mind raced, trying to reconcile what she had just seen with any rational explanation. The deputy had been dead, she was certain of that, no living person could have taken that much damage and kept coming. Yet he had been moving, hunting. Maria's voice shook slightly. "Lieutenant, what in God's name was that?" Before Rebecca could answer, the radio erupted with gunfire and Amy's panicked voice. "Contact. Multiple hostiles. We're pinned down in the pharmacy, northwest corner. They're everywhere." Rebecca did not hesitate. "Fall back. We're coming to you." She and Maria bolted from the sheriff's station, sprinting across Main Street toward the pharmacy. What they saw stopped them in their tracks. Dozens of figures had emerged from buildings and alleyways, all moving with that same terrible, purposeful speed toward the pharmacy where muzzle flashes indicated Amy and Jessica's position. The infected, Rebecca's mind supplied the word automatically, showed the same characteristics as the deputy, gray skin, dead eyes, but they moved as a group, almost coordinated in their assault. She could see Amy and Jessica through the shattered pharmacy windows, backs against the medicine counter, firing in controlled bursts at the mass trying to force its way inside. Suppressing fire. Rebecca barked, dropping to one knee and engaging the nearest cluster of infected. Maria joined her, their combined firepower cutting down several of the creatures. But for every one that fell, 2 more appeared, crawling out of storefronts and homes like ants from a disturbed nest. The town had not been evacuated, Rebecca realized with horror. The residents were all still here, just not human anymore. We can't hold this position. Maria shouted over the gunfire. There are too many. Rebecca's tactical training warred with the unreality of the situation. They needed to reach Patterson and Morgan, needed to consolidate their position, but the infected were closing in from all sides now, drawn by the sound of gunfire. She made the only decision she could. Fighting retreat to the vehicles. Patterson, Morgan, on my mark, you exit the rear of the pharmacy and circle back. We'll cover you. The radio crackled with acknowledgement. Rebecca and Maria laid down a withering field of fire, dropping infected with headshots, the only thing that seemed to stop them permanently. Through the chaos, she saw Amy and Jessica burst from the back of the pharmacy, running full sprint toward the edge of town. Then Rebecca saw something that made her heart sink. Between her team and their vehicles, blocking the road out of Ashford, stood a wall of infected, at least 50 strong, and they were not moving randomly anymore. They were waiting, almost as if something was directing them, using strategy. The trap had just closed around them. Rebecca's mind calculated possibilities in a fraction of a second, none of them good. The infected blocking their escape route stood unnaturally still, a coordinated behavior that defied everything she knew about mindless undead from any training manual or classified briefing. Amy and Jessica had made it halfway across the open ground when the wall of infected suddenly surged forward with terrifying synchronization. Left. Break left into the hardware store. Rebecca screamed into her radio, adjusting her aim to create a corridor of fire. Maria understood instantly, focusing her shots on the right flank while Rebecca cleared the left, their bullets dropping infected with precise headshots. Amy grabbed Jessica's arm, yanking her toward the store's entrance as grasping hands reached for them, missing by inches. The two women crashed through the already broken door and disappeared inside just as the infected mass closed the gap behind them. Now all four soldiers were separated, Rebecca and Maria in the middle of Main Street with ammunition running low, Amy and Jessica trapped in the hardware store surrounded by infected. Rebecca's tactical radio buzzed with heavy breathing as Amy's voice came through. We're in, but they're trying to break through the back entrance. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they're inside. Rebecca scanned their surroundings desperately, looking for anything they could use. The municipal building across the street had a fire escape leading to the roof, and more importantly, it was built from brick and concrete, defensible. New plan, she announced, ejecting her spent magazine and slamming in a fresh one, her second to last. Patterson, Morgan, there's a municipal building, red brick, 3 stories, northeast from your position about 40 yards. It has a fire escape on the east side. That's our rally point. Get to the roof and fortify. Maria's eyes widened. Lieutenant, they'll never make it 40 yards through that horde. Rebecca's jaw set with determination. They will because we're going to give them a path. Remember Fort Benning, the urban warfare course, Scenario 12? Understanding dawned on Maria's face, followed quickly by apprehension. That's insane. We were using simulations, not actual. It's the only play we have, Rebecca cut her off, already moving toward an abandoned pickup truck in the street. Scenario 12 had been about creating maximum chaos in an urban environment to allow team extraction. It required precision, timing, and more than a little luck. Rebecca climbed into the pickup's bed, finding exactly what she hoped for, 3 propane tanks, probably hauled from the hardware store before everything went to hell. Maria caught on immediately, running to a nearby sedan and smashing the window to pop the gas cap. Patterson, when you see smoke rising from Main Street, you run and you don't stop. Stay low, move fast, head straight for that fire escape. Understood? Amy's acknowledgement came between bursts of gunfire. Rebecca worked quickly, using her combat knife to damage the propane tank valves, letting gas hiss out while Maria soaked rags from a nearby shop in gasoline. The infected were closing in again, drawn by their activity, forming a tightening circle. They had maybe 30 seconds. Rebecca positioned the leaking tanks in the truck bed, then helped Maria stuff the gas-soaked rags into the pickup's fuel tank. "This is either brilliant or we're about to die horribly," Maria muttered, pulling out her emergency flare. "Maybe both," Rebecca replied, raising her rifle. "Light it and run on 3. 1, 2, 3. Maria ignited the flare, touched it to the rags, and both women sprinted toward the municipal building as fast as their legs could carry them. Behind them, flames raced up the rags toward the truck's fuel tank just as the first infected reached the vehicle. The explosion ripped through Main Street with a deafening roar, the propane tanks detonating a second later in a cascading fireball that sent infected bodies flying like ragdolls. The shockwave knocked Rebecca forward, but she kept her feet, glancing back to see a wall of flame and smoke spreading across the street. Through the chaos, she saw Amy and Jessica burst from the hardware store, using the confusion exactly as planned. The infected that had been surrounding the building were either burning or disoriented, their coordinated behavior shattered by the explosion. "Go! Go! Go!" Rebecca urged, reaching the fire escape and starting to climb, providing cover fire as Maria followed. Below, Amy and Jessica weaved through burning wreckage and stumbling infected, close now, so close. Jessica stumbled over debris, and for one heart-stopping moment, Rebecca thought she would fall. But Amy was there, hauling her back up, practically carrying her the last 15 yards. They hit the fire escape together, boots clanging on metal as they climbed toward salvation, toward the roof where they might finally catch their breath and figure out what nightmare they had stumbled into. The 4 women collapsed onto the roof of the municipal building, chests heaving, uniforms soaked with sweat and streaked with ash from the explosion below. Rebecca immediately moved to the roof's edge, peering down at the street where fires still burned among the wreckage. The infected had not dispersed. Instead, they gathered at the base of the building, dozens of gray-skinned figures staring upward with those horrible milky eyes, swaying slightly as if waiting for instructions. "Ammunition count," Rebecca ordered, trying to steady her breathing. The responses came quickly and confirmed her worst fears. Maria had 2 magazines left. Amy had 1.5. Jessica was down to her last magazine, having burned through most of her rounds holding off the pharmacy assault. Rebecca herself had 1 full magazine plus the partial in her weapon. Maybe 200 rounds total against a town of infected that numbered in the hundreds. Jessica slumped against the roof's low wall, her hands shaking as she reloaded. "Lieutenant, what are those things? They're not just sick people. I put 5 rounds into one guy's chest and he kept coming like nothing happened." Rebecca exchanged a glance with Maria before speaking. "I don't know exactly what we're dealing with, but standard engagement protocols don't apply. Headshots only. It's the only thing that drops them permanently." Amy moved to the roof's opposite edge, scanning the town's perimeter. "The vehicles are a no-go. They've got the entire street blocked off. And I'm counting at least 100 of those things spread throughout town, probably more in the buildings we can't see." She paused, her voice dropping. "Lieutenant, back in the pharmacy, before they attacked, Jessica and I found something. Medical records from the local clinic, dated 5 days ago. A hiking group came down from the mountains exhibiting aggressive behavior and severe neurological symptoms. The doctor's notes mentioned bites, animal bites he thought, maybe from rabid wildlife." Maria moved closer to listen. "So this started with hikers? Some kind of infection from the wilderness?" Jessica nodded, pulling a folded paper from her vest pocket. "The doctor quarantined them in the clinic basement, but his last entry says the infected were exhibiting impossible strength and the disease was spreading faster than any pathogen he'd ever seen. Hours, not days. People bitten in the morning were fully turned by nightfall." Rebecca took the paper, scanning the hastily scrawled medical notes by the fading daylight. The timeline matched what command had suspected but never confirmed. Patient 0 had come down from the mountains near an old mining operation, the same operation that had been abandoned in the 1950s after unexplained deaths among the workers. The government had sealed the mines and classified the incident, but apparently something up there had remained dormant for 70 years, waiting. Her radio crackled with static, then a voice cut through, distant and broken. "Any military personnel, this is Colonel Frank Morrison. Fort Carson Command, attempting to reach reconnaissance team, please respond." Rebecca grabbed her radio. "Command, this is Lieutenant Hayes. Do you copy? We are pinned down in Ashford, town is completely overrun with infected hostiles." More static, then Morrison's voice again, clearer now. "Hayes. Thank God. We lost your signal after the explosion. What's your situation?" Rebecca gave a rapid briefing, outlining the infected's behavior, their numbers, and her team's dwindling resources. The silence that followed stretched too long. When Morrison finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that made Rebecca's stomach drop. "Lieutenant, I need you to listen carefully. What you've encountered is designated pathogen variant X7. It's a reanimating virus that was discovered and supposedly neutralized in the 1950s. Someone or something has released it again. The infected are being controlled." Rebecca's blood ran cold. Controlled? By what? Morrison's response was interrupted by a sound from the street below that made all four women rush to the roof's edge. The infected had parted, creating a corridor through their ranks, and through that corridor walked a figure that was different from the others. This one moved with fluid grace, not the jerky predatory speed of the common infected. It wore the remains of what looked like hiking gear, but its skin showed advanced stages of infection, veins black as oil beneath gray flesh. But the eyes were different. Not milky and dead, but aware, intelligent, and fixed directly on Rebecca. When it spoke, its voice carried perfectly in the unnatural silence, raspy but clear. "Soldiers. How brave. How futile." It smiled, revealing blackened teeth. "You cannot leave. You can only join us. The mountain has awakened, and we are its children. This is just the beginning." The thing that was no longer entirely human raised one arm, and every infected in the street below began to move toward the municipal building in perfect unison, their hands reaching for the walls, beginning to climb. The sound of fingernails scraping against brick filled the air as dozens of infected began scaling the municipal building's walls, climbing with unnatural coordination. Rebecca snapped her rifle up, sighting on the nearest climber. "Conserve ammunition. Pick your shots. Only fire when they reach the top." Below, the intelligent infected watched with those disturbingly aware eyes, its smile never wavering. Maria positioned herself at the building's north corner while Amy took the south, Jessica covering the fire escape they had used to reach the roof. The first infected head appeared over the eastern ledge, and Rebecca's shot cracked through the evening air, dropping it back into the climbing mass below. Two more appeared immediately after, their gray hands gripping the roof's edge with impossible strength. Maria fired twice, clean headshots that sent both tumbling backward. But for every infected they dropped, three more continued climbing, using the bodies of the fallen as additional handholds. "They're learning," Jessica shouted, firing at a cluster attempting to flank their position via a drainage pipe. "They're using the dead ones as a ladder." Rebecca's mind raced through their options, all of them bad. They could not hold the roof indefinitely, their ammunition would not last another 10 minutes at this rate. The building itself offered nowhere else to go, the floors below would be swarming with infected within minutes. She glanced at the town's perimeter, at the darkening forest beyond, then at the radio still clipped to her vest. "Command," she barked into it while firing at another climber. "Morrison, we need immediate extraction. Air support, anything." The response came through broken with static. "Negative, Hayes. Storm front moving in, no birds can fly in these mountains for at least 6 hours. You need to survive until dawn. Find shelter, fortify, and wait for extraction at first light." 6 hours might as well have been 6 years. Rebecca looked at her team, saw the same realization in their eyes. Amy suddenly pointed toward the west. "Lieutenant. The church. It's got a bell tower, stone construction, only one way up." Rebecca followed her gaze to the white church steeple rising above the other buildings 3 blocks away. It was taller than their current position, older construction, built like a fortress in the way of frontier churches. More importantly, it had a narrow entrance that could be defended and was separated from surrounding buildings. "We'd have to cross 3 blocks of infected," Maria said, dropping another climber. "In the dark. With almost no ammunition." Jessica's rifle clicked empty, she was down to her sidearm now. "We can't stay here. We're going to be overrun in minutes." Rebecca made the decision. "We go now while we still have bullets." "Maria, you're on point." "Amy, rear guard." "Jessica, stay between us. We move fast, we move quiet when possible, loud when necessary. The church is our Alamo. We hold there until dawn." The intelligent infected below seemed to sense their intention, its head tilting as Rebecca and her team moved toward the roof's south side, the direction farthest from the main horde. "You run, little soldiers," it called out, its voice carrying an edge of amusement. "Run to your sanctuary. Stone walls will not save you. Nothing will." Rebecca ignored it, helping Maria secure a rope they had found in a roof access shed to the building's south fire escape, the one facing away from Main Street. This side of the building had fewer climbers, maybe a dozen compared to the 40 or 50 on the other sides. Suppressing fire, then we fast rope down. "Move." Amy and Jessica fired rapidly at the infected on this side, creating a momentary gap. Maria went first, sliding down the rope with practiced speed, hitting the alley below and immediately engaging 2 infected that lurched toward her. Rebecca went next, her boots hitting pavement hard, rolling and coming up with her rifle ready. Jessica followed, then Amy, who cut the rope after her descent to prevent the infected from using it. They ran. Through the alley, across a side street, through a ransacked grocery store where infected emerged from behind toppled shelves. Maria dropped 3 with headshots while running at full sprint. They vaulted a fence, cut through a backyard where a family of infected burst from a home, fresh turned and frighteningly fast. Amy's rear guard fire kept them at bay, barely. The church loomed ahead, its white walls now gray in the twilight, the heavy oak doors standing closed. Rebecca hit those doors at full speed, praying they were not locked. They flew open, and the 4 women tumbled inside, immediately turning to slam them shut. But the infected were right behind them, hands reaching through the gap, and the doors would not close. On the other side, pressed against the wood with all their strength failing, the women realized with horror that the infected were far stronger, and the doors were slowly being forced open. The oak doors groaned under the pressure of dozens of infected hands pushing from the other side. Rebecca's boots slid backward on the polished floor despite her full weight pressed against the wood. Maria grunted beside her, arms trembling with effort. "We can't hold them." Jessica scanned the church's interior frantically, her tactical light cutting through the gloom. The sanctuary was large, with wooden pews lined in neat rows and a balcony overlooking the main floor. Then she saw it. The pews. "We can barricade." Amy was already moving, holstering her weapon and grabbing the nearest bench. Despite its weight, adrenaline gave her strength as she dragged it toward the door. Jessica joined her, and together they wedged the first pew against the doors just as Rebecca and Maria's strength began to fail. The added reinforcement bought them seconds to stack 2 more pews, then a 4th, creating a makeshift barrier. The doors shuddered with impacts as the infected threw themselves against the entrance, but the barricade held. For now. "The windows." Rebecca ordered, and the team split up, checking every ground floor opening. Stained glass windows lined the walls, beautiful depictions of saints and angels that shattered as infected fists punched through them. Maria fired carefully, dropping infected as they tried to climb inside, while Amy found a maintenance closet filled with tools. She emerged with hammers and boxes of nails, tossing them to Jessica. "Board them up. Anything we can use." They worked with desperate efficiency, ripping panels from interior walls and nailing them across windows. The sound of hammering mixed with gunfire and the constant moaning of infected created a symphony of chaos. Rebecca checked her ammunition. 1 magazine left. The others were in similar condition. When the hammering stopped and the last window was sealed, they retreated to the balcony's narrow stairwell, the only approach to the upper level and the bell tower beyond. The barricaded doors finally splintered. Infected poured through the gaps, flooding into the sanctuary like a gray tide. But the narrow stairwell became a fatal funnel. Rebecca and Maria positioned themselves at the top, and what followed was brutal, efficient warfare. Every infected that entered the stairwell met a single bullet. Headshots only. No wasted rounds. Bodies piled up, creating an obstacle that slowed the others. Amy and Jessica used the respite to fortify the bell tower entrance above, their last fallback position. Hours blurred together in a nightmare of gunfire and discipline. Rebecca's arms ached, her ears rang despite her training, but her shots never wavered. Maria called out ammunition counts like a mantra. 4 rounds. 3 rounds. 2 rounds. When Rebecca's rifle clicked empty, she transitioned smoothly to her sidearm. Behind her, Amy's voice called down. "Lieutenant. The storm's breaking. I can see stars." Rebecca risked a glance at her watch. 4:17 a.m. Dawn was perhaps an hour away. Her pistol had 6 rounds left. Maria was down to 3. But something had changed. The infected had stopped their assault. The stairwell fell silent except for the team's ragged breathing. Rebecca peered into the sanctuary below where dozens of infected stood motionless, parted once again in that deliberate formation. Through the gap walked the intelligent infected, its movements unhurried as it gazed up at them. "Brave soldiers," it said, its voice echoing in the church. "You have fought well. But you are finished. No bullets left. Nowhere left to run. Accept the gift. Join us. Join the mountain's children." Rebecca straightened, meeting those aware eyes with steel in her own. "We're soldiers of the United States Army. We don't surrender. Not to enemies foreign or domestic. And definitely not to some walking corpse with delusions of grandeur." The creature's smile faded. It raised its hand to signal the final assault. Then the eastern windows exploded inward, not from infected, but from brilliant searchlights. The thunder of rotor blades shook the church as 2 Black Hawk helicopters took positions outside, their door gunners opening fire with devastating effect. The infected were cut down in waves, the heavy caliber rounds doing what small arms could not. The intelligent infected screamed, a sound of rage and something like fear, before its head disintegrated under focused fire. Colonel Morrison's voice boomed through a loudspeaker. "Hayes. Evac is here. Rally on the south window, now." The 4 women did not need to be told twice. They ran for the indicated window, where crew members waited with harnesses and helping hands. As Rebecca lifted off, watching Ashford disappear below, she saw military vehicles rolling in, flamethrower units turning the infected to ash. The nightmare was not over, she knew. The mountain still held secrets. But today, 4 soldiers had held the line. Today, they had survived. And tomorrow, they would be ready to fight again. The end.